It is extremely competitive and a unique experience to work at NASA and imagine one busy doing spacewalks. Totally fascinating. I'm really excited to host Dr. Emily Matula, currently at NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston. Emily, I'm so curious to know, how does your typical day or week look like?
It varies from day to day, month to month, and even within those weeks and months, the schedule can change in a drop of a hat. So, for example, just yesterday we were doing a spacewalk or extravehicular activity where we had two crew members going outside the International Space Station to repair some solar panels. Interestingly enough, I was on console that morning, helping my team to make sure that the procedures were in place to get our astronauts ready for the day, to get them in their spacesuits, and to go out the door. After I completed my shift on console, I immediately went to our training facility where we have a one-to-one mock-up of the International Space Station, where I then trained crew members that will be launching here in about 6 months how to work inside of our airlock. So those are the two aspects or two parts of my job. I'm both a flight controller, but I'm also an instructor. So I have to make sure that when our crew members are doing their spacewalks, they're doing them safely. And so the only way to do that is to do hands-on training with our equipment.
It all sounds so dreamy to me, trust me.
It's a lot of fun, I will say that.
Right. I can imagine. I mean, I don't want to say I can imagine. I can't imagine though. But yeah. Tell me, what did you study and how does it help you in your current work?
So I studied with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering at the University of Michigan. And what that did is it gave me a really good base and technical understanding of engineering systems and gave me the critical thinking skills that I needed to help with my job. It allowed me to understand with these different engineering systems how they interact with each other and how these different systems could influence each other. So if one system were to go down, so in the case of the spacesuit, we have fluid lines, we have pressure lines, both carrying oxygen and water. So making sure that I understood if one pressure system were to go down, how would that influence other pressure systems further on down the line in the spacesuit. Then I continued on with my master's in space engineering, and that was my first interaction with the space environment. So we talk about microgravity, and there are different considerations that you need when you're talking about a microgravity environment. But this master's was focusing more on satellites. So it was more of the technical side, the hardware side of how to develop these different satellites, CubeSats, in order to launch different payloads. But I've been always more interested in the human side of spaceflight. And so I started researching around and looking at other universities and other programs, and I found the University of Colorado in Boulder, where they do a Bioastronautics program, and that's the study of and support of life in space. And I visited there, and I fell in love because they were working on different projects that I knew I needed to be a part of. And so I went there, and not only do they consider the spaceflight environment, so that microgravity environment, but what they look at is how that influences or how that affects the human system, so the human body. Sometimes people don't realize that, but when you're in a microgravity environment, your body changes. You actually elongate your spine because you don't have gravity loading. Your cardiovascular system goes through changes as you have fluid shifts throughout your body. And I thought that was all fascinating. So I did my PhD at the University of Colorado in Bioastronautics, and I was looking at using algae, so that pond scum that you see growing in puddles everywhere. I was looking at using those microorganisms, algae, to support human spaceflight. So to sequester CO2 that humans respire, but also provide oxygen for humans to later take in.
Wow. Can I ask you, why did you choose this career and what's your favorite part about it?
So I chose this career, or actually it kind of chose me a little bit. As I was finishing up my degree, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I had a friend who had worked at this position for quite some time, and he said, come down and take a look at what I do. And what I realized was he was interfacing with astronauts, he was interfacing with other team members who were supporting the International Space Station. And what I realized was I wanted to be there. I wanted to be helping and supporting this human spaceflight endeavor. So I interviewed, and what I realized was if I wanted to have hands-on, first-hand influence and support of human spaceflight, this would be the job that I would need to do. Because like I said, I'm literally teaching astronauts how to conduct their spacewalks and how to do their job safely in space.
Amazing. I really want to take this liberty to ask you, how did you get your first interview at NASA? How long did it take to get hired? And what are the steps along the way?
It was actually quite a long experience. What I will say is that the first time that I interviewed with NASA, I didn't get the job. It is very competitive, and there are so many different jobs that you could do at NASA. But there are only a few jobs that allow you to have this type of first-hand influence or support of human spaceflight. And I applied to other jobs within NASA that had more of a technical side, or really more of a engineering side. What I do is engineering, but it would be jobs that were developing hardware. And I looked at those and I applied for them, but I think the interviewers could tell that my passion wasn't there. So I didn't get those jobs, and that's okay, because I then interviewed for this flight controller position, and they saw the passion, and they saw that I was very interested in working with these astronauts and working with the other groups. So there are just, I think, about 8 to 12 different console positions. All of them have some aspect that they're focusing on to support the International Space Station. And when I talked about teamwork and being able to help support my team members, I believe they saw that passion and said, this is the person we need at this position.
I can see the passion too, trust me. So tell me, what is the best part of working at NASA? And can you please share your one of the best and beautiful experiences with us?
Sure. I enjoy the fact that others have similar passions. So, and I appreciate you, saying that I have passion, and yes, I definitely do for human spaceflight, but it's shared amongst my team members. And that makes it so much more enjoyable to work with my team members, because since we all have that same passion, it makes our work easier. Everybody's excited to come in, everybody's excited to work, everybody's excited to keep pushing and advancing human spaceflight. And because of that, everybody's willing to work together as a team. I think that's something that I took for granted when I was in undergrad and in my early collegiate years, is they had a lot of teamwork projects. Once I got into grad school, it was a lot of individual research. There was some collaboration, but not as much teamwork. So it could be very isolating at times. But then coming to NASA and being reintroduced to this team environment, it just provides such good support. And knowing that if for some reason I need to pass along a procedure that I'm writing, or if I need to have somebody else help me develop a training lesson plan, that support is there. And that's probably one of my favorite parts of working here at NASA. In terms of a favorite story, we do very long trainings, day-long trainings, and it's interesting because we work with different pieces of hardware, and one piece of hardware that we work with is the spacesuit. And so one of the longest days of training that I had, I actually got to go inside the spacesuit. I got to wear the spacesuit, the EMU, and they submerged me in the NBL, the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, which is a huge, giant swimming pool, 60 feet deep, almost as big as a football field. And that's where we train our crew members to do their spacewalks. So it gives the feeling of weightlessness. And so I got the experience to dive into that pool in the spacesuit and translate around the structure, because we had a one-to-one mock-up of the International Space Station submerged in this pool. And it was just a humbling experience to see all of my teammates and all of my colleagues helping to support this training that I was receiving to make me a better flight instructor and flight controller. And so it was a very tiring day. It's a lot of work to move around inside that spacesuit, but it was so worth it, and I had a lot of lessons learned from it.
Incredible experience, I must tell you. What advice do you have for someone who wants to begin working in your career field?
I think it takes two things. One is the technical background. We can't shy away from that part. I do work with all different types of engineers, so there isn't one type of engineering that's the best. I work with electrical engineers to biomedical engineers. Of course, we have aerospace and we have mechanical. But what I'd like to impress upon is that engineering mindset and that ability to do critical thinking. The other thing would be the passion for human spaceflight, as well as the drive to keep advancing human spaceflight. If you don't have that drive, or you don't have that passion, it's going to make the work a lot harder for your colleagues to help support you, and that just doesn't make a very fun working environment. And I believe that NASA sees that after a while. So keep having that drive, having that passion will take you very far in this career.
Thank you. I want to mention I have worked with your father, Dr. Matula, who's an extremely intelligent person and has been a mentor to me and many of us. Tell me, how has he inspired you? And I'm sure you have other inspirations, but I would particularly want to listen to how has your father inspired you.
So speaking of that passion, speaking of that drive, I think that those are qualities that I definitely inherited from my father. If I didn't inherit them, I saw them in his work. And so it was a good reminder, and it was a teachable moment to see his passion and his drive in his work. And both my mother and my father did a great job, or still do a great job, of supporting me in my career and in my endeavors. I believe that my father showed me the passion and the tenacity to keep going. So don't give up, keep going, figure out what are going to be your next steps. You talked about the intelligence, and sometimes it's figuring out and having those critical thinking skills of what would be the next steps. My mom, on the other hand, provided that support and provided that ability to say it's okay. Sometimes I feel that when people are going through different areas that may take a long time, doing graduate school, doing these different types of careers take a long time, and they get very tiring after a while. So having somebody like my mother saying, don't give up, it's okay, keep going, and having that support is extremely important. So having both of those sides supporting me has definitely helped me in my career. What I will say is I was extremely fortunate. I know that there are some people in my career and my colleagues that didn't necessarily have that support system at home, but what they had instead were teachers and professors and mentors that helped them along the way as well. And so what I would say is, while I was very, very fortunate to have family members that were so supportive, finding that mentorship in others around you can be equally as important. So just trying to find your inspiration is something I think everybody can do, whether it be at home or at school or at your work.
Absolutely. One of the most courageous things you can do is identify yourself, know who you are and what you believe in and where you want to go. Thanks for joining me, Emily, and I wish you all the best in life.
Thank you so much. It has been such an honor to be selected for this, and thank you so much for taking time to talk to me, and because I know how busy you are, so thank you again.
I do appreciate all your time. Thank you so much.